Welcome back to Friday Afternoon Catholic on July 19th, 2019. Today we're going to talk about the Amazon Synod. A synod is a meeting called by the Pope about a specific issue that's kind of pressing in the church, something the Pope wants some input on. So he calls bishops from all different parts of the world to go to Rome and advise him and the church on kind of the way they see things. And then the Pope will put together kind of a synopsis of the whole thing and issue an apostolic exhortation, which is basically an educational letter for the faithful, so that people can kind of get together and know where the church is going on something. So in this case, the Amazon Synod is going to focus on kind of the Catholic faith down in South America primarily, and it's going to take place in October of 2019, this year. It is a permanent council in Rome that is there all the time, but then on these specific issues they name them something like the Synod on the Youth, the Synod on the Family, and in this case the Amazon Synod. The head of the council in Rome is Cardinal Baldisseri, and he was appointed by Pope Francis, I think, back in 2013. So he's overseen a number of synods during the Francis pontificate. Basically, when they come to an issue like this, that council of bishops then gets together and calls in other bishops from across the world, some of which are then also called in by the Pope to advise the Pope on these issues. The Pope is the one that calls the synod. The Pope is the one that determines the topics that will be discussed, the agenda, kind of where he wants this thing to go. He's the one that opens the synod and closes the synod, and then he's the one that prepares the final document, kind of laying out what the synod decided on any given issue. There are a couple of interesting members to this synod that give us an indication that maybe they're going to try and take the whole church in a whole new direction, and there's some other indications of that with this Amazon Synod. So this is something that really all Catholics should be paying attention to, and not just ignoring this Amazon Synod, because this is kind of an important thing. So there's two individuals that I kind of want to talk about on this synod. One is Cardinal Claudio Humes. He once said that the church may need to revisit female ordination. He has entertained the idea of married priests, and when asked whether or not Jesus would have supported same-sex marriage, Cardinal Humes was uncertain as to how Jesus would answer that question. Another member of the Amazon Synod is Bishop Erwin Krautler. He's a retired bishop who has also voiced approval of female ordination. Now, he apparently is friends or maybe strongly influenced by another bishop by the name of Fritz Lobinger, who is a strong advocate for something that is kind of like a Catholic priest, but not a Catholic priest. I'm not sure how this is all going to come together. But he has an idea for a different kind of priest who doesn't go to the seminary, is married, and is distinctly different than priests. I think that's a Protestant street preacher as far as I could tell, but in any event, this Bishop Lobinger has influenced Bishop Erwin Krautler to kind of buy into that idea. And now Krautler, just within the past couple of weeks, has given an interview in which he said that regional bishops' conferences receive the right to ordain to the priesthood married men. He also said women should at least be ordained as female deacons, which he says would be a beginning. A beginning of what? I'm not sure, possibly the beginning of the end. But the church has already decided that only men can be ordained to the priesthood, and St. John Paul II issued the letter on that years ago and said that we simply don't have the authority as the church to ordain women to the priesthood, because Christ himself is the one who ordained the priests, and they were all men at the time. Now, there were very important women around Jesus, like our Blessed Mother and Mary Magdalene and the other Marys, etc. But for some reason, Jesus didn't choose to ordain any of them as priests and give them any of the abilities to bestow the sacraments like he did the apostles. So there's other reasons as well. Historically, it's never been done. The priest stands in persona Christi, and that would be impossible for a woman to do because Christ was male. Just a lot of different ideas like that. But in any event, some of these people want to revisit that issue again in this Amazon Synod. So you might think, well, what's the big deal? I mean, this is concerning the church really down in South America. But I'll get to that in a second and explain kind of what the perception is on all this. You should know that people like Phil Lawler and Ed Penton have been writing and talking about these synods for the past several years, and what they found that under Francis, these synods, there's more secrecy involved in them. They're not as transparent as they were under previous popes. There's more of an effort to appoint like-minded bishops to these synods so that they can kind of control what the message is going to be coming out of the synod. There is more of an effort to control the appointees by establishing, the path that they're going to take through the synod, and so it's kind of just almost like a rubber stamping of what the Vatican wants to have happen. And so pay attention to the things that Phil Lawler, Ed Penton, and some of the other good Catholic writers are writing about this, the trustworthy ones. You're going to find those primarily in the Catholic News Agency, EWTN, various places like that. You need to avoid the the National Catholic Reporter. You need to avoid people like Austin Ivory, James Martin, terrible resources. America Magazine. You just can't rely on anything in those publications or from those sources. So, one of the things that is also concerning is where the money is coming from for this synod. I mean, it costs money to put on a synod because they're bringing in bishops from all over the world. There's a lot of moving parts to them, and so they need to fund it somehow. And there's not just a synod fund at the Vatican. So they look for people to provide the financial support for them. And here, the financial support, believe it or not, is coming out of Germany. Now, Germany is probably one of the worst examples of Catholicism in the world today. They probably have the lowest turnout each Sunday for Mass in their population of Catholics anywhere in the world. They have a large number of bishops and priests that are just flaky. I mean, coming up with all kinds of garbage that is contrary to the Catholic faith. And the problem is that they have a lot of money in the church in Germany because the Catholic Church in Germany is state-supported. All churches are state-supported in Germany. So it doesn't matter who's going to Mass on Sunday, how many are going to Mass on Sunday. The Catholic Church continues to rake in money in Germany because people pay their taxes and the government sends the money to the church, which is primarily empty, but they're sending the money anyway, so they got to do something with the money, right? So they're using it in this case to kind of fund this Amazon Synod. So what I say is, if you follow the money, you'll find the influence, and the influence here is a really, really bad version of Catholicism. I mean, a bunch of German bishops got together and they wanted to give communion to the married Protestant spouses of Catholics. They didn't see any problem with that. They loved just all kinds of wacky ideas. So even Pope Francis has had to kind of quiet them down a little bit because they're getting so far afield. In any event, the German translation of the pre-synod document, which is called the Instrumentum Laboris, has a foreword to it in German. And in German it states that the Instrumentum Laboris, which is going to be what the Synod talks about, the Amazon Synod in October, the document calls for a profound change in the Church. And it says that what will be discussed in Rome will have significance for the Church worldwide. So that brings us back to why we should be concerned about this, even though it's really going to be talking about indigenous people in South America. It's really, I think they're trying to make this kind of a pattern for kind of changing the entire Catholic Church, and we don't want that to happen because we are a church of Scripture and tradition and the magisterium, and God never changes. So the president for one of these German institutions that's funding the Amazon Synod, Bishop Franz Joseph Overbeck of Essen, sounds very medieval, but that's what they call him. He recently said the Synod will lead the church to a point of no return, and therefore nothing will be the same as it was. So that's pretty ominous coming from Germany, and what the German church apparently wants. Now, not all the bishops in Germany are bad. Matter of fact, there's two extremely good bishops in Germany, Gerhard Mueller, Cardinal Gerhard Mueller, and Cardinal Walter Brandmüller. Both of them have spoken on this document, the Instrumentum Laborum, and both have said it has got some serious problems, and they're very concerned about where this Amazon Synod is going to lead. These are two very trustworthy cardinals that we should pay attention to. So if they're concerned about it, we should be concerned about it. And keep an eye on the upcoming Amazon Synod, and keep your antenna up for discussions that are going to lead to married priesthood, female ordination, and other kind of aberrations that are just completely unnecessary and would be very unhealthy for the Catholic Church. The fact is, there's other faiths out there that will ordain women. There's other faiths out there that will ordain married men. And my suggestion is that if these people want that so bad, go to those churches and get it. Nobody's stopping you. But if you want to talk about these things, let's talk about them consistent in the way that the Catholic Church has been teaching it for 2,000 years, and that is consistent with the gospel, consistent with Jesus Christ. And that means no female ordination, which is kind of interesting because I can't be ordained either as a married man. And so maybe what they're trying to do is knock down that wall and say, well, gosh, married men can be ordained now too, which would basically take about half of the world's population and say they're eligible to be a Catholic priest. And that would draw a bigger spotlight on the fact that women cannot be ordained. And with the political correctness of our time, hopefully whittled away at that is what they think. That's their hope anyway. So in any event, thanks for tuning in to this week's Friday Afternoon Catholic. Pay attention to the Amazon Synod, and pray that wisdom and truth and goodness prevails, and that dishonesty and confusion and heresy does not.